Tali's guess. By afternoon on the next day, Klein had fully recovered from any signs of exhaustion. He walked in the Blackthorn security company with steady footsteps. Good morning, Klein. Roseanne. Good morning, Klein. The weather is so cool and beautiful today. I'm looking forward to tonight's feast. Roseanne, who was wearing a light green dress, greeted him with a smile from behind the reception desk. Also, we're gonna go eat with at Unc Will's restaurant today. The recap. We got blue balled on Derek. That's what we happened. And we had Terra Club meeting. More diary pages. Nightwalker said I'm Alice. Nightwalker messed up on his first time Derek, yep. Nightwalker was on his alt. And then it realized he's not on his alt, so he couldn't be Alice anymore. I fucking wanna see more of Derek, man. I think he lost everything. He's praying to an unknown existence, and Klein was like, oh, I'm gonna observe him, which is fair enough from Klein, right? Klein deliberately touched his stomach and said, Miss Roseanne, you shouldn't be talking about that so early in the morning. I'm already sick of today's mission that has yet to arrive. I'm only hoping for the evening to arrive sooner. Charisma. Me too, Roseanne chuckled. She looked to the left and right, then she beckoned for Klein to come closer. She lowered her voice and said, I met Madame Dolly earlier. Spirit medium Dolly? Klein asked in surprise. The most famous spirit medium from Mama County had been living at Enmad Harbor all this time, and it wasn't a short distance from Tingen. Yes, Roseanne gave him a firm nod and said, but she already left. Oh, she's my deal beyonder. In order to become a spirit medium, I would leave Tingen and travel all around the world all by myself, to Intis, to Feysak, to Feina Potter, southern continent, to the vast varieties, primitive forest and snow-covered plains. Lady, be aware of the Nighthawk rules. Klein shook his head in amusement. Even Madame Dolly has to apply and obtain permission to leave Emmet Harbor. I know, but you can just remind me about it now and shatter my dreams, Roseanne said and peeved. The truth is, I wonder, I will never become Beyonder. It's too dangerous. I don't know when I'll die from some gunfire. What I have seen, Beyonders are basically people who turn themselves into monsters to fight against monsters. Wow, true. We are miserable wet wretches. Archbishop Chanis said that we are guardians, but also a bunch of miserable wretches, are constantly fighting against the threats and madness, Klein replied, sighing. The goat had left a deep impression on him. Yeah, me too. To fight against the abyss, we have to endure the corruption of the abyss. The two of them fell silent in unison. Roseanne was the first to break the silence as she pursed her lips toward the partition and said, Captain want to meet with him when you arrived. Alright. Oh, when you meet him. Oh, Captain want you to meet him when you arrived. Okay. Right, with hat and cane in hand, Klein passed through the partition and entered Tuan's office after knocking on the door. A middle-aged gentleman with deep and serene grey eyes and high hairline put down his coffee cup and said with a smile, Dolly was here. Why do you have to explain his hairline, man? Don't say I'm surprised. Roseanne had just informed me, Klein replied with a smile. Don didn't mind his humor, but sighed. Dolly was transferred to the Blackland Iokis, which is the world's busiest and most crowded city. There were the highest population of Beyonders and the most opportunities. She has higher chance of becoming Archbishop or a senior deacon than me. Why? Klein asked curiously as he took a seat. Oh, Don has those ambitions, I guess. Don thought for nearly 20 seconds before answering. She has a unique talent in mastering and exploiting sequence potions. He just knows about the acting method. I mentioned the internal rule of the Nighthawks before. If you want to consume the next potion in the sequence, you'll have to wait 3 years and go through a strict examination to prevent any loss of control. But typically 3 years is far from sufficient. I spent 3 years going from a sleepless to a midnight poet. It took me 9 years. Oh my god, 9 years to go from Midnight Poet to Nightmare, a full 9 years. And to go from Nightmare to Sequence 6, I already spent 3 years. I have no idea how many more years I need. And our bodies age and your energy starts to decline. Even if you overcome the latent dangers, we shouldn't attempt advancing anymore. This is because the risk of losing control at that point is so high that no one is willing to risk it. As for Tali, she's different from me and most Beyonders. After she became a corpse collector, she handled its special application after only a year. She hoped to consume a follow-up potion immediately. What surprised me everyone was that she actually passed through the stricter examination and obtained the Gravedigger potion. Wow. It only took her one more year to go from Gravedigger to Spirit Medium. This year will be her 5th year as Beyonder. She's only 24 this year. My age, by the way. My age. Young enough to have many opportunities ahead of her. At the surface, on the surface, she's the most famous spirit medium in our county, but she's truly an actual spirit medium. Isn't that acting? O'Neill had apparently mentioned that Madame Tali had similar tendencies, and felt that he had grasped the key reason for Madame Tali's quick ascension through her ranks. Now, why didn't we get this inner monologue in Donghua? Because I guessed that also, but well, Klein only found out later, and they never like lampooned on it in Donghua. Captain, you're young enough yourself. You're only in your 30s, pushing 40s, by the way. Klein comforted Don, but added in his heart, it's just that your memory isn't that great. Don drank a sip of coffee. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Why didn't you ask Madame Dali about her method of mastering and exploiting sequence potions? Klein purposely asked. Don put down his coffee cup and massaged his temples as he spoke. She told me to become a true nightmare. I don't know what that means. Oh my god! But play the role of a nightmare. Man, a nightmare sounds sinister. Klein creased his eyebrows and temporarily fell silent. Then Don took out his smoking pipe and sniffed at it. Darling and I discussed the possibility of Sirius' follow-up potion being clown. Assuming that the member of the series didn't lie to you, she brought up an interesting hypothesis. What hypothesis? Klein asked hurriedly as his eyes turned bright. He had once used a divination method to determine if Clown was the follow-up potion for Seer. The answer he received had been vague, but it seemed to be close to being confirmation. Don's deep and serene grey eyes swept his gaze at him, while he said in a thought, a normal sequence pathway proceeds in stepped manner. The advance according to a particular similarity. For instance, Sleepless, Midnight Poet, and Nightmare all obviously related. The darkness of the night, as well as the peaceful sleep and tranquility that is generated from sleep, it can be imagined that every subsequent sequence would have identical traits, only with more power and a wider scope. They might be linked to secrets, disaster, horror, to the Crimson, ADC, etc. Damn. Certain sequences pathways appear unrelated, but when we analyze them in detail, we can still find similarities such as assassin and instigator. The implied similarity is to bring people calamities, pain, sorrow, and despair. Hence, the follow-up sequence will be abide by this pattern. Klein paid close attention and asked proactively, but Seer and Clown doesn't have such a connection. Yeah, it does. Circus. Yeah, Don nodded and said, Dolly believes that there might be sequence pathways that share another kind of relationship. After all, there are a lot we do not know. Just how Mystery Briar goes into melee, what was it called? Melee something? Melee hands? No. What was it? Melee something, right? After all, there's a lot we don't know. When I said the world end, Don clenched his fingers. Oh, yeah? Each and every... Oh, here. He paused for a moment before saying Dolly said that in sort of pathway, the low to mid sequence potions will respectfully provide the Beyonder an ability that seems brand new and unrelated to the others. When the Beyonder reaches point of quality of change, these abilities will mix into an abnormally powerful job that includes them dull. Melee Scholar, yeah. Oh, I guess Mystery Briar and Scholar still have a connection, right? Klein listened intently, but he felt lost. Dunn lifted his right hand and said, a normal sequence pathway advances a bit at a time, just like a child growing up. A growing child becomes taller, stronger, heavier, and more mature from a young age, while special sequence pathways are more like, having said this, Dunn lifted his thumb. This is sequence 9, then it is a finger. This is sequence 8, then he gradually lifted up the rest of his fingers. Each and every finger is independent and doesn't seem to be related to the others, but in the end, when he said the end, Don clenched his fingers into a fist. Wait, you have 10 fingers though. Understand now, Clan was suddenly enlightened. He agreed with Lady Dolly's guess and the captain's metaphor. That's how it is, he nodded in a deep thought. Wait a second. Let me read. But in the end, it makes sense, right? Sequence 8 clowns, Sequence 9 0 are completely different and have brand new abilities, and according to the description of the Nighthawk's intelligence, the corresponding Sequence 7 and Sequence 8 clown don't share any similarities either. The corresponding Sequence 7. Klein fell silent for a while before curiosity pressing on, at which stage will the different abilities combine to form a qualitative change. Dunn took another sip of coffee and chuckled. Dahlia and I quest Sequence 4. Why? Klein blurted out. Because according to the way the churches categorize sequences, Sequence 4 is the beginning point of the highest sequence, or the higher sequences. They said that merely achieving such a level brings about qualitative changes in vitality and energy. Ancient times, Sequence 4 Beyonders were qualified to be called demigods in the 4th epoch. It's a pity that such Beyonders are very rare in this era, Dunn said wistfully. Okay. I have 10 fingers, but I'm only using 5. Are you fucking masturbating? If Sequence 4 is to Sequence 1 or high sequence Beyonders, then who are the low sequence Beyonders? Klein asked with interest. Sequence 9 through 7 were considered as low 1,000 years ago, but in recent centuries Beyonders are few in number, and each search has listed Sequence 7 as a mid sequence. Dunn laughed in self-deprecating manner. Sequence 9 and Sequence 8 are low sequences, then Sequence 7 through 5 are mid sequences. Finally, those Sequence 4 and above are high sequences. Klein repeated in his head, inevitably felt a yearning for that. The Emperor Cell was a high sequence Beyonder. Of course he was. However, the higher the sequence, the higher greater risk of losing control, Klein thought to himself in fear. He asked as though in a seemingly casual manner, what is Sequence 4 potion for the Church of Goddess called? In fact, I'm not sure, but security clearance isn't high enough for me to privy to that information. I'll be able to read them when I become a Dequees Bishop or Nighthawk Deacon. Oh bro, I'm sorry, man. Dunn shook his head and smiled. In fact, at least half of the church's 13 archbishops and 9 senior deacons at the top of the church's hierarchy below Sequence 4. Okay, so interesting. That says me being optimistic. The Archbishop in Sanguil will become wanted, lost control when he tried to advance to Sequence 4. Oh la la la. He switched pathways, bro. The one who stole sealed artifact 008, this potion was apparently called Gatekeeper. Klein thought and probed. Is Sleepless Sequence 5 Gatekeeper? Copy. He went to Sequence 4 Death. No, that's Spirit Medium's pathway. You'll be allowed to... Oh, Spirit Medium pathway. That's in Spirit Medium's pathway. So, Corpse Collector pathway. You'll be allowed to access the information when you reach Sequence 7 and become a bishop or captain of a Nighthawks team. Interesting. Corpse Collector pathway Sequence 5 is Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper. So if you get assigned to be a Chinese gate, like, look out, you're acting on your own already. You're gatekeeping. Wait, gatekeeping! It has a second term. You're gatekeeping Lord of Mysteries from normies, right? From tourists. We are doing that. Am I acting? You'll be able to access the information when you reach Sequence 7 and become bishop or captain of Nighthawks. Gatekeeper Sequence 5 of the Spirit Medium pathway. Does it mean that it's keeping watch over the gates of hell? Or keeping watch over the gates of the spirit world? Klein guessed. Alright, go to Ankh-Nir and continue with your studies. Stan smiled and said, don't forget about dinner tonight at all Ankh-Will restaurant. Reservations have been made. I'll introduce you to the rest of the Nighthawks officially. Alright, I already prepared the money. Klein forced a smile. No, there's no need. Have you forgotten that we have additional bonuses? The part about you completing an assignment mission? Dunn waved. Klein was completely taken aback before replying with a beaming smile. Alright, Captain. He turned around and walked toward the door while counting inwardly 3, 2, 1. Hey, why didn't Captain call me back? Klein dragged out one for a very long time, only to be surprised that Captain Don Smith hadn't forgotten to add anything. Wow, rare W. A miracle. In the armory, old Unc Neil stole a glance at Klein, who was in a good mood. Don't be obsessed. Don't be obsessed with tonight's dinner. You still have a lot of things to learn, not just more militaristic magic, ancient Hermes, Dragonese, Elvish, and many more. Yeah, every afternoon besides your day off, you have to have at least 2 hours of combat training with an instructor. Combat training? Captain mentioned it. Klein was shocked. Old Neil nodded and didn't hesitate to answer. He forgot. Oh no, he did forget. Fuck. 97. Combat teacher. Ooh, new character. Let's freaking go. So, Ints mentioned again, by the way. Ints rarely gets mentioned. This is the second time. And the 008 as well. Which I love. I love it. I'm really glad we're getting more info on that. In the volume. So he failed to advance to sequence 4 on the sleepless pathway, which makes sense. That's why he went to sequence 4 of the death pathway at the end there. I wonder how many people have successfully switched pathways. Is he the first one? 1 second, guys. Combat teacher. At 2 in the afternoon, outside a simple 2-storied building that was in despair at the outskirts of the North Borough, Klein, who was in his probationary inspector uniform, looked at the weed-filled garden and the vines that had crept up to the walls. He turned his head in surprise. My combat instructor lives here. Should the combat artist who was selected by the Nighthawks be exceptional? Leonard Mitchell, who had guided Klein here, snickered and said, "Don't underestimate Mr. Gawain because of your residence surroundings. Although he was never conferred an aristocratic title, he was a true knight back in the day." Having said that, the poetic Nighthawk, who was dressed in white shirt, black trousers, and buttonless leather boots, suddenly felt melancholic. He was active during the waning era of the Knights. The warrior donning their armors will storm through every enemy ranks, despite the gunfire and cannon fire, destroying their enemies and redefining the battle lines. But alas, they were quickly met with the invention of the high-pressure steam guns and 6-barrel machine guns. From then on, the Knights had gradually stepped down. Jesus, full-on weaponry. Yeah, Mr. Gawain met the same fate. More than 20 years ago, the Alba Knights Order of Chivalry faced the most advanced weaponry of the Inter-Republic army. Every time I recall this, it seems like I'm touching the dust heaps of history. The poet in me stirs when I'm thinking of this irreversible and fated destiny. But alas, I do not know how to compose the poem. What's the point of saying so much? When acted oblivious to Leonard's self-deprecation and chaos-serious succession. University schoolmate once told me that the composing of poems requires a certain degree of talent. It's best to start by reading the classical poems anthology of the Loen Kingdom. Oh my god. Leonard's mood changed on a whim. He replied with a light-hearted tone. I purchased that book long time ago, as well as other titles such as Selected Poems of Roselle. I will work hard to become a true midnight poet, Mr. Seer. Is he hinting at the acting method? Khan replied as though he won't understand him. You will still need books on grammar. Alright, let's enter. Leonard extended his hand. Yeah, true actually. A true midnight poet. This has Leonard. I'm guessing he shadow told him. Leonard extended his hand and pushed open the half-closed metallic gates. 2 of them followed the path toward the house. They were still a distance away from the house when Klein saw a tall man walking out from behind the main door. He had a short blonde hair, his brows already laced with white hairs. His facial features looked like they had ravaged with age. His wrinkles were etched deep across the face. "What are you doing here?" the aged man asked in a deep voice. Mr. Gawain, as per your contract with the police department, this probationary inspector will be learning the art of combat under your guidance, Leonard explained with a smile. Combat? There's no need to study combat in this era, Gawain looked at Klein with turbid eyes and said in dead voice. You should learn how to throw your gun and shoot. You should master the most advanced weaponry. Was this the psychological trauma caused by the 6-barrel machine guns and high-pressure steam guns? Klein didn't give a reckless reply. Instead, he smiled and looked at Leonard. The art of combat is still a skill a policeman has to master. Some of the criminals we face are not those who must be executed on the spot. Some might not even have weapons. In that case, you have to rely on combat techniques, Leonard said, obviously prepared for the situation. With a dark expression, Gawain fell silent for more than 10 seconds before saying, Come on, throw a punch. He was speaking to Klein. Klein, who was not holding his cane, remembered the boxing matches he had seen in his previous life. He raised his arm and threw it forward. Gawain's lips twitched indescribably. He thought for a moment and said, Kick! Tilting to the side slightly and twisting his hips, Klein tightened his thigh muscles and kicked forward with his right foot. Boom! Gawain covered his mouth and cleared his throat. He looked at Leonard and said, I will honor my contract, but based on this foundation, he needs to come here 4 times a week, 3 hours each time, for the first month. You're the combat expert, up to you. Leonard nodded without hesitation. He smiled and said to Klein, See you at dinner. After Leonard walked out the metallic gate, Klein asked for out of curiosity, Instructor, how should I begin practicing punching or footwork? As a qualified keyboard warrior, he understood the importance of footwork in combat. Gawain stood akimbo as he shook his head lethically. What you need now is strength training. See those? Those are 2 dumbbells made of steel. They shall be your partners for the day. Other than that, you also have to practice deep squats, running and rope skipping. Let's use those one set at a time. While Klein was still in daze, Gawain suddenly raised his voice and said sternly, Understood? Understood. At that moment, Klein felt as though he had returned to military training and was facing an inhumane instructor. Change out of your clothes. There's a set of knight's training clothes on the sofa. Gawain suddenly sighed. He turned around and walked toward the black steel dumbbells. 6 in the evening, a corner table of the old Unc Will's restaurant. Other than Fry, who was guarding Chinese Gate, all the members of the Blackthorn security company were present. There were 6 Nighthawks and 5 civilian staff. Okay, there we go, guys. The dinner. Gawain seems cool, by the way. Very cool name as well. Old school knight. A white tablecloth was draped over the long table. Waitress carried over plates of food, portioned them without them before serving them to each individual guest. Klein saw steaks drenched in black pepper sauce. He saw bacon, sausages paired with mashed potatoes, egg puddings, asparagus and special cheeses. He even saw rose-colored champagne. However, he had no appetite. The raining in the afternoon had nearly made him vomit. Placing the pale, newly introduced Nighthawk with turbid eyes, Dunn raised the glass of the red wine in front of him and laughed. Let us welcome our newest official member, Klein Moretti. Cheers! The golden and introverted black-haired lady, Royale Radine, the sleepless Kenley White, the sloppy Leonard Mitchell. I mean, Leonard probably gives sloppy blood anyway. As well as white-haired, black-eyed midnight poet Sika Tron, all raised their cups and looked at the new member of their team. Klein thought back the discomfort of training and raised his glass of amber champagne. He stood and said, Thank you. He clicked glasses with every Nighthawk, tilted his head back and finished a small amount of champagne. Is our Miss Author not going to say something on this occasion? Dan smiled as he looked at Sika Tron. Sika Tron was a lady in her 30s. She had average looks but had expectational demeanor, one that was quiet and serene, coupled with her few strands of fraying hair added a unique charm to her. Damn, Klein had heard old Neil mention that his midnight poet had taken one side job as an author and had attempted to submit her works to newspaper and magazines. Unfortunately, only a few smaller newspapers had accepted them. So she's a poet, right? Is she also doing an acting method? Or is she writing like opinion articles and stuff? Sika smiled and looked at Ton. Wanted to make In order to make the term Miss Author into clarity, Captain, I think you should give me funds to self-publish my work. Dunn laughed. You should learn from old Neil and give me more suitable reason. I'm most impressed with Mr. Neil in this apartment, Roseanne echoed in between her mouthfuls of roast mutton. Amidst his chatter and laughter, Leonard looked at Klein and said with a chuckle, Huh? Are you so tired that you have no appetite to eat? Yeah, Klein sighed. If you haven't touched your food yet, I can be of assistance. Leonard acted as though he didn't want to face any food. Klein didn't mind, he nodded and said, that won't be an issue. And with that, a good portion of the food in front of him was eaten by Leonard and the rest. Nearing the end of the dinner, the waiters served plates of beef, pudding, and ice cream. Klein tasted ice cream and found it cold and sweet, and it was particularly appetizing. Before he realized it, he had finished the ice cream, drizzled with a blueberry sauce. Damn, that sounds delicious. And as a result of this, he started to feel hunger pangs. It was a hunger which demanded recharging food that came earlier after intense exertion. Swallowing his saliva, Klein looked at the front, only to see that all the plates were empty. There were no leftovers. Damn, you fumbled. Guys, are you in the chat? Wake up. Ding, 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 ding. Let's end the dinner here and give Klein a final toast unsuccessful. Before finishing a sentence, Klein asked, Captain, may I order another plate of food? The group fell silent after hearing such a request, only to break out into chuckles moments later. You finally recovered, no problem. Order 2 plates if you want. Tan shook his head and laughed. While patiently waiting an unbearable amount of time, Klein heard his stomach growling. Finally, freshly prepared black pepper steak was served before him. His fork and knife danced as Klein finished the medium-done steak in 90 seconds. Oh my god! Tears nearly falling from his eyes, the meat juices and the fragrance of the sauce lingered in his mouth. Sometime later, Klein let out a satisfied sigh as he looked at his empty plate. He put down his knife and fork and took a sip of his champagne. I'm playing League. Oh, what server are you playing on? Wanna play Arena later? Waiter, the bill please. Don turned around and called for the waiter. The waiter went to the counter and then returned with a check. He gave a thorough breakdown. He opened the 5 bottles of Desi champagne, each bottle being 12 soldi and 3 pence, a small glass of Southfield red wine 10 pence, each black pepper steak was 1 soldi, 2 pence, oh my god, each serving of beef pudding was 6 pence, a serving of ice cream was 1 soldi each, the total would be £5, 9 soldi and 6 pence, like a weekly salary. 5 pounds, 9 soldi and 6 pence, that's nearly my weekly salary. A restaurant is indeed much more expensive than eating at home. Ryan clicked his tongue upon hearing that. He felt lucky that the captain had said that he didn't need to pay out his own pocket. Then he had some pretty cash from bonus earnings. He calculated the cost carefully and noticed that the most expensive portion of the meal was the alcohol. 5 bottles of champagne had cost more than £3. This is no different from Earth. Glenn secretly dropped his stomach and forced down the last of his champagne. I don't know whichever. If it's EU West, we can play. If it's EU Northeast, we can't play. The next morning, Klein felt bloated. He tried to get off the bed in his sleepy stupor. Just as he exerted strength, he was instantly awakened by his aching muscles. He felt as though his body wasn't under his control because of the training you did yesterday. What a familiar feeling. It's the same as the day we got punished with frog jumps. Today is rest day, but I still have to pay a visit to my mentor and see if I can borrow the monograph of the Hornazzi's Plain Pig from the library at the university. Klein's lips twitched as he made his way outside with some effort. He wanted to throw a gasp with every step. Wow. Klein, what happened to you? Klein, what happened to you? Melissa, who had just come out of the bathroom, sized up her brother suspiciously for his odd posture and slow movement. Mr. Osik, but we are going to see Cohen, though. Right? Because Cohen is our mentor. I'm guessing it's somehow gonna turn out to be Mr. Osik. So, 98, let's go. Gawain seemed cool. Dinner was also really cool. 98. Unc Will's Diner. Or restaurant or whatever. Mr. Osik? Yeah. Cohen is his mentor though. And fourth goat. Thank you for the subscriptions, guys. Mr. Isaac, faced with his sister's question, all Klein will do was reply with a regular smile. Sore muscles. He originally believed that by consuming the sequence potion, his constitution would be enhanced as a beyonder, but the harsh reality told him that the stats points were all allocated to his spirituality, mind, intuition, and interpretation. It didn't aid him in adjusting to combat training quickly. As for the original Klein, he had focused on his studies early on and had suffered from malnutrition. Oh wow. That led him to possess a below average physical build. The fact that he was having after effects from working out was to expected. Sore muscles. I remember you returning after dinner last night and you didn't do anything else. Does alcohol cause sore muscles? Melissa inquired with an inquisitive look. Does alcohol cause sore muscles? Sis, that question I can't help but make me have inappropriate thoughts. Oh, the alcohol makes you limp, right? And said, no, there's nothing to do with alcohol. It was from yesterday's afternoon. I joined the company combat training. Combat? Lisa was even more astonished. Glenn organized his thoughts and said, well, this is what happened. I considered it and believe that as a historical and relic consultant of security company, it's impossible for me to stay in the office or port warehouse forever. Perhaps there will be a day when I have to accompany them to the villages or ancient castle to the site of some relic. That might require me to hike, to cross rivers, and to walk a lot. I'll have to endure all sorts of tests posed by nature, so I have to possess a sufficient healthy body. Wow, another excuse lined up. Another excuse lined up. So you joined combat training to enhance your stamina? Melissa seemed to understand her brother's intention. That's right, Klein answered with a great affirmation. Melissa said with a frown. But isn't gentlemanly? Don't you always keep yourself to the standards of a professor? A professor only requires the ability to read historical documents, ponder over difficult questions, and maintain a polite and gentlemanly demeanor. But Melissa, that's not Sigma. Of course, I'm not saying those aren't the real things, all good things. I prefer men who can solve problems on their own, regardless of whether that solution requires brawn or brain. Melissa smiled. Glenn smiled and said, No, Melissa, your definition of a professor contains a misconception. A true professor can communicate with people gently and politely, but he can also educate the other person using the principles of physics by raising a cane to convince someone that there isn't an obstacle in communication. Wow. Principles of physics. Melissa was momentarily at a loss, but she quickly understood what her brother was saying. She was suddenly unable to retort him. After resting for a little while, Klein took his cane, donned his top hat, left the house, strolling towards the public carriage shop. Yeah, it's not Sigma. During the summer, Koik University had trees with shade providing foliage, flourishing with birds and luxuriant flowers. It was peaceful and calm. Walking along the river, Klein took a turn towards the history department. Then he found a 3-story building which showed its age, and located his mentor Cohen Quentin's office. He knocked and entered his room, but he was shocked to see that the man sitting at his mentor's seat was academic Isaac. Isaac! Good morning, Mr. Isaac. Where's my mentor? We made an appointment by letter to meet here at 10. Klein asked, puzzled. Isaac was Quentin's best friend and often debated him with his mentor regarding academic topics. Smiled and said, Cohen had last-minute meeting and went to Dingen University. He asked me to wait for you here. He had bronze skin, an average height. Wait, Isaac might be... Remember how it said... Whoa, let me cook. Remember how it said that Isaac... the death... pathway and the people who are part of the death cult or the secret organization, I forgot its name, but the people who worship death or whatever, they are from like the southern continent. What if Isaac is also from the southern continent? Also has bronze skin, right? Asked me to wait for you here. He had bronze skin, an average height and build, black hair, brown eyes as well, right? And gentle facial features. Being in presence brought on an indescribable feeling, as though numerous episodes path, something like that. Yeah, actually, I'm gonna copy that. It's go into my notes. As though you could see the man As though you could see the man's eyes that he had been through the vicissitudes of life. Under his right ear was a tiny mole that one will notice unless closely examined. Having said the reason, Isaac suddenly frowned as he carefully observed Klein. Huh? Here. Feeling confused by the sudden scrutiny, Klein looked at his attire. Having committed some breach of etiquette, tuxedo, black vest, white shirt, black bow tie, dark colored trousers, leather boots with no buttons, everything seems normal. Isaac rose east as he chuckled softly. Don't mind me. I suddenly noticed that you are way more energetic than before. You look even more like a gentleman now. Thank you for your compliment, Klein. Thank you for your compliment. Klein accepted it and calmly and asked, Mr. Osik, did my mentor manage to find the book Richards of Honatz's main big relics in the school library? He found it thanks to my assistance. He found it with my assistance, Osik said, smiling gently. He then pulled open the drawer and took out the grey-covered book. You are no longer a Korea University student anymore. You can read it here, but you cannot take it home. Alright, Klein delightfully took an academic monograph, and with a hint of fear. The book's design was fully in line with the current trends. It used a hard paper as a hardcover, and was printed with an image like an abstract version of the main peak of Hornach's mountain range. Klein took a glance and found a seat. He flipped open the book and started reading carefully line by line. Yeah, there are like 100 typos, yeah, maybe. Guys, I'm back. Oh, welcome back, masters. As he became engrossed in the book, he suddenly realized that there was a cup of rich and fragrant coffee by his side. Help yourself with the sugar and milk. I'm drinking coffee right now, guys. As he put down the silver saucer and pointed the milk jar and sugar container. Thank you, Klein nodded with gratitude. He added 3 cubes of sugar and a teaspoon of milk before continuing to read his book. The book, Research of Hornatz's main peak relics, was not a very thick book. Klein finished reading it. When it was almost noon, he took note of few noteworthy points. First, the settlement of the main peak of Hornatz's mountain and its surrounding areas was obviously an advanced civilization, which existed as a part of an ancient nation. Secondly, from their wall murals, his perspective of life appears similar to that of humans. I can assume that they were human. Third, they revered yet feared the darkness of the night, hence they called the god the ruler of Evernight, mother of the sky. Interesting. The weirdest part is that researchers haven't found any graves in the entire area, see? That's us. Traditionally, seems to indicate that the people didn't need to be buried because they didn't die. However, that will be contradictory to the contents of the wall murals. In the wall murals, the people in the nation believe that death is not the end. They believe that their deceased family will protect them in the night, hence they will keep their deceased family members at home, on the bed by their side for a full 3 days. What's after that? Did someone eat them? There's nothing beyond that for the wall murals, as it doesn't involve burials. Klein took another sip of coffee and continued to write down his afterthoughts in his notebook. Mother of the Sky, Sky Mother, is such a grand title. While the ruler of the Evernight obviously overlaps with the Evernight Goddess, is this a contradiction at its roots? I think it's the same person. Same god. In the ancient remains on the main peak of Hornatz's mountain range and its surrounding area, every arrangement and decoration was well preserved. Even the wall murals didn't have any signs of damage. Before it was discovered, there seemed to be no disturbance at all. The table was arranged with cutlery and there were dried stains of rot on the dining blades. In some rooms, there were half-filled bottles of alcohol that had almost turned to plain water. So, people literally disappeared from there overnight. I'm guessing that some kind of god or a high sequence beyonder went there and like ate them up or used them as like sacrifices. But that doesn't make sense. Why didn't they do burials before? I think them not doing burials and there aren't being no graves is a significant point that we cannot sleep on. So, imagine that someone just ate them. But yeah, like they died and everything that was going on in their life, example, food on plate, half drinking alcohol, everything stayed, nothing was damaged. So obviously there was no war, right? There was no like extinction by starvation, there was food on the plates. But if the Evernight Goddess sacrificed them or something, consumed them, ate them, What happened to the nation of people? They seem to have left their homes in a hurry, but taking anything with them, they never returned. Considering how there are no burial grounds, it only makes it weirder. The author, Mr. Joseph, also mentioned that when they first discovered the remains, he even had to believe that the people residing there had just vanished all of a sudden. Klein stopped writing and cast his gaze at an illustration. On John Joseph's third visit on the main peak of Anatsis mountain range, he had used a new camera model to shoot a monochrome photograph. In the photo, the lofty palace had a collapsed wall and overgrown with weeds. It followed the Khadifia style for design. When he flipped through the photograph, Klein's first thought was that the palace he had seen in his dreams. Yeah, it is. The two styles were identical, only difference was that the one he had dreamed of was on a peak, and it was way more magnificent. They also had a huge chair, a seat of honor. Looked like it didn't sit a human. Countless translucent maggots clustered together and squirmed slowly beneath his chair. I can confirm that my dream is related to the ancient remains of the main peak of the Onatsis mountain range. That should be the nation of Evernight, which was referenced in the Anticonus family notebook. Klein nodded slightly and closed the book. At that moment, Asik, who was sitting opposite of him, touched the inconspicuous mole under his right ear and said, "How was it? Found anything?" "Quite a bit. Take a look. I've written so many pages of notes." Klein pointed at the table and smiled. "I don't understand why you're suddenly so interested in this matter," Asik sighed and said, "Klein, when I was studying at the Backland University, I had dabbled with some divination and did quite a bit of research on that. Well, I discovered that there is disharmony in your fate." "What divination? Are you talking to me about divination?" As a seer, Klein looked at Asik in the academic in amusement. "How is it disharmonious?" Asik thought for a moment. Asik has realized, by the way, that Klein has become beyonder. Have encountered many strange coincidences in the past 2 months. Oh Jesus, coincidences, as he indebted to Mr. Asik. Klein didn't dispute this question as he subsequently began thinking. "If you're talking about coincidences, the most obvious matter was when we were after the kidnappers. We actually managed to find clues on the Anticonus summer notebook that was lost for days in the room opposite of the kidnappers. Also, Ray Bieber didn't flee from Dinga in a hurry. Instead, he found a place to digest the power bestowed by the notebook, allowing for sealed artifact 2049 to track him down easily. That seemed to be against common sense. Although Ayur Harson gave a reasonable explanation, I always had a nagging feeling that it was somewhat coincidental. Oh, Selena had stolen a glance of Hannah Swinson's secret incantations, but she held back till her birthday dinner banquet to try it out, and it happened to discover it, which is quite a coincidence too. Otherwise, Hannah Swinson wouldn't have been there, the only one to die so suddenly." Klein thought about it seriously for a few minutes and said, "There are 3, neither too many nor too frequent. Furthermore, there was nothing that was indicated someone's involvement and guidance." Asik nodded slightly. Asik is onto something here, guys. As Emperor Cell once said, a single coincidence is encountered by anyone. Twice is still normal. Thrice is when one should consider what internal forces are influencing those coincidences. "Can you tell me anything else?" Klein probed. Asik laughed and shook his head. "I can only tell that there's some disharmony, but nothing else. You have to understand that I'm not a real seer." Oh my god. Isn't it basically equal to saying nothing? Mr. Asik is quite odd. Is playing a charlatan in front of a charlatan like me. Klein let out a breath, seizing the moment when Asik stood up. He pinched his lapella and activated his spirit vision. When he looked over at Asik's aura fully appeared before his eyes, everything seemed very normal. Unfortunately, I can only see the ether body and astral projection of a person above the grey fog. Klein thought carefully as he tapped his lapella again while standing up. Sheesh. Wow. Okay, I mean, genuinely, like, thinking about Asik knowing about Klein there, giving little hints about coincidences. I'm not sure, like, maybe Asik is, like, speaking from experience there. I don't think Asik knows, obviously he doesn't, about the 008, but like, what has happened, right? I got like 5 ads, rip. Also, isn't it also a little bit weird that all the people from Anatsis just disappeared just like that, by the way? I'm just saying. Quill mentioned. Jeez, scary. Red chimney. 1 second, guys. Opa. How is the music, by the way? The goat Azik? I love Azik. Also, I think the people of Hornazis were used by some kind of beyonder. I don't know if it was through sacrifices, it was Evernight Goddess herself, but they were used by someone, I think. Maybe someone ate them up, you know what I mean? Red Chimney. Late in the afternoon, Klein returned home and threw the curtains, allowing his room to sleep in the darkness. He took out his pen and paper and thought for a long time, finally writing down a sentence. The kidnapping of Elliot was due to beyond their elements. Exactly. Oh my god, let's go. No shit. The seer Klein had tried to divine if those coincidences were a consequence of non-natural developments, but the results showed otherwise. This time he was influenced by Isaac to look into these events again. He also drew a lesson from the Sutta clown. He seriously designed an appropriate divination statement, eliminating any description that might be vague or cause confusion. Yes, I should break down the three coincidences and divine them separately, Klein noted in thought as he slowly removed the topaz from his wrist. He held the spirit pendulum with his left hand and allowed it to hang close over the divination statement on the paper. He collected himself under the state of cogitation. With his eyes closed, Klein started chanting repeatedly. The kidnapping of Elliot was due to beyond their elements. He translated the statement over and over again. Klein opened his eyes and looked at the pendulum, only to see it was turning counterclockwise slowly. Interesting. He's still negative, only muttered to himself. He designed several other divination statements, but the results persisted. There was nothing strange about that incident. Well, he doesn't know it yet, but he should have asked, is that event by a sealed artifact or whatever? Sealed artifact involvement. Separately, divined the event of Ray Bieber, Stay and Dingen, and Selena's magic mirror divination incident. The answers were both events were normal. Was I, a real seer, frightened by the Charlotte and Mr. Hazik? Besides, Captain and the others didn't feel that anything was off. Klein laughed and shook his head, but he remained cautious while he planned on using the dream divination technique to get a final confirmation. After some thought, he changed the divination statement to fit the change in method. The true reason for Elliot's kidnapping, as he scribbled with the fountain pen, Klein paused and pondered over his words. He was calling him fraud. After reading it over and over again, he tore the slip of paper and walked toward his bed. He relaxed and laid down. With divination statement in hand, Klein quickly fell asleep with the help of cogitation. He found himself in a contorted, broken world. Regaining his senses, he began swimming through the blur. Eventually, he saw the few kidnappers. He saw them lose their final chip at gambling table, saw them obtain guns from underground sources, saw them survey the area. They rented an apartment across Ray Bieber apartment as their hideout. Those didn't form a continuous scene. Instead, they were presented in the form of flashing pictures. Frank couldn't find anything that was abnormal. Furthermore, he'd also aligned with the statement given by the kidnappers. After exiting the dream, Klein separately divined the other two incidents but had same result. Their developments followed logic. The coincidences were really coincidences, oh boy. I was indeed overthinking things. Mr. Asik is a merely divination enthusiast. Klein stabilized his pendulum and shook his head with a bitter smile. He's about to draw the curtains and allow sunlight into the room when he froze. In the original Klein's impression of Mr. Asik, he is dependable and trustworthy person. He had never once said anything baseless. Even if he was already curling with Mentor, it was limited to academic topics. Each of them had their reasons. If he was truly a mere divination enthusiast, he wouldn't have interacted with me like that, and the memories of original Klein had nothing about him liking a divination. Of course, this could be due to loss of corresponding memories. Klein frowned and couldn't ease his worries. He needed a way to confirm this. I love cultivation. He suspected that Mr. Osik had unwittingly come across some insider information and was trying to remind him using divination as an excuse. How should I confirm this? Klein paced back and forth across the dark room, trying to recall the other divination techniques he knew. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. He suddenly halted as an idea came to him. Let's assume that these coincidences are dubious. I'm unable to divine as a result either because of my sequence isn't high enough or I'm being affected by outside interference, but I can change my environment. I can change my environment to some place that is even more mysterious, even harder to understand. Klein felt pumped. He pulled open his drawer and took out a silver dagger. He concentrated and allowed his spirituality to flow out from the tip of the dagger, becoming one of with the surroundings. With each step he took, the wall of spirituality sealed off the entire room. Klein planned on doing the divination about the grey fog, that to do the divination in that mysterious world. In the magnificent ancient divine hall above the endless grey fog, Klein sat down at seat honor and end of the end of the bronze table. Before him was a piece of goatskin he willed into existence. He lifted pen and tried writing down divination statement as he had previously. The kidnapping of Elliot was due to beyond their elements. He held the spirit pendulum and hung it low. Klein quickly composed himself as he turned silent and ethereal. Half closing his eyes, he recited the statement 7 times using his spirituality to interact with the spiritual world that stood above all. Feeling the tug of silver chain, Klein opened his eyes to look at the pendulum. The sign made him freeze immediately. The pendulum was spinning clockwise. Jesus! This meant that there are beyond the element behind Elliot kidnapping. This was completely different from the result he had gotten outside world. There were no traces of any interference. Such as power of means is terrifying. What's the motive of this person behind this? Has my fate intervened with Antigone's family's diary? I was immensely shocked. He lost his calm and rotation of the pendulum slipped into chaos. What was the mysterious cultivation novel? It kinda is, yeah. He put down the topaz and dropped his clapella. His expression was abnormally grave. After contemplating for a few seconds, he didn't attempt to divine the other 2 events. Instead, he wrote a new divination, a statement. The true reason for Elliot kidnapping. He held the paper in his hand and recited the statement 7 times. Klein leaned back and fell into sleep above the fog. Soon he saw a boundless, illusory grayish-white fog. The fog dissipated slowly, revealing a colorful lawn filled with flowers. The space between the flowers and the plants and the plains was folding into itself like a monster that came alive. Oh, Jesus. Klein tried his best to look forward, barely making out an image of a dark red chimney. At this point, the scene before him shattered, putting an end to the dream. This is the red dark chimney was the place where Lanevus was doing his summoning of the true creator on Magus, right? At this point, the scene before him shattered into putting end of his dream. Klein abruptly straightened his back in the majestic divine hall. His heart was beating wildly without reason. It felt like a just spied and terrifying thing. He took induced deep breaths to stabilize his chaotic emotions. By the way, I'm just saying, it is. For the mysteries of cultivation novel, think of the churches as different sects. Think of the pathways or the sequences as different realms. It's literally a cultivation novel. Tap, Klein tapped on the side of the table sometime later and slipped into deep thought. Red chimney, garden, lawn. How is this related to the person behind all of this? I cannot determine his motive from the coincidences, nor can I conclude that there are any evil intent. Right, Nightwalker's real name is Alice. Yeah, Nightwalker is a femboy called Alice. In the midst of thinking, Klein felt alarmed for himself, Captain Fry, and others. If you're a puppet dancing on a string, what even scarier is that we thought so highly of ourselves? By the way, puppets dancing. Let me cook for a second here. Puppets dancing on a string. You know what else was a puppet? Sealed Artifact 2049. I wonder if Anticonus family had some beyonder to do with puppets. It's just a stupid quest, I guess. Obviously they had, right? But I like this letter that dancing on a string. What's even scarier is that we thought so highly of ourselves. Sigh, I don't know how to raise this matter to Captain. All Neil divination produced the same result as mine in the outside world. If they asked me to confirm it in front of them, I have no way of doing that. Klein rubbed his temples as if he had a headache. Yeah, kid. By the way, Night fan calling excess fan bear calling Night Tug a kid. That's ironic. You're not Alice? It's just a meme, right? You're both kids. You're 16. Pipe down. You're one of my favorite viewers, though. XS Fanber Sketcher 92. You're one of my favorite viewers. You really are. Strange muttered. He started. Wait, what? After nearly 20 seconds of calm, he began divining the event of Ray Bieber. Oh, sigh, I don't know how to raise this matter to Captain. All Neil divination produces the same result as mine in the outside world. If they ask me to confirm in front of them, I have no way of doing that. Klein rubbed his temples as if he had a headache. After nearly 20 seconds of calm, he began divining the event of Ray Bieber's day and Tingen. Similarly, he used first spirit housing. His time Klein was shocked to see the opus hang motionless. It was neither a confirmation or rejection of the statement. Strange. He muttered. He started to guess the reason for his phenomenon. The person behind this has sensed my divination and engaged countermeasures. Imagine. Following this, he tried to dream divination technique, but all he saw was fragmented pieces of fog. He no longer made any new discoveries. The result of Selena's magic mirror divination incident were the same. Klein could almost confirm the conjecture at this point, since he had no way of notifying Captain Dunn Smith. For the time being, he had an unprecedented motivation to improve his abilities. I must head to the Divination Club later and quickly succeed in my acting to chest the seer potion. Also, I have to confirm whether the clown potion is indeed the subsequent secrets of seer, as well as gather the clues about it. In addition, I have to interact more with Mr. Ozick and see if I can dig up whatever inside information he holds. Klein held his forehead with his right palm and quickly drew up a plan and determined his focal point. After some thought, a goldskin appeared in front of him again. He picked up his pen and wrote the corresponding sequence 8 of Secret Science series Clown. From his previous experience, the present Klein was completely convinced that his divination abilities were augmented and enhanced above the grey fog, just like how raids are usually successful. In this result of having good luck, he muttered and picked up Spirit Pendulum. Sometime later, Klein received a definite answer. The corresponding sequence 8 of Frequency 9 Seer was Clown. He then wrote the paper once again. The corresponding sequence 8, segment 6 and 5 of Seer would grant at least one brand new unrated power. Let's see. Klein exhaled as he tried the spirit dowsing again. However, he saw the opus hang motionlessly without any rotation. There isn't enough information to complete the divination to receive a revelation, he muttered to himself while seemingly deep in thought. Then he set down the silver chain and began considering the required statement for a dream divination. Nearly 20 seconds later, he picked the fountain pen and wrote seriously. Clues to the clown potion. Okay. Here we go. Right, Taku. Nightwalker is so sad. Anyway. You're all kids to me, by the way. There's no one older than me here, I think. Anyway. Cool divination about the Grey Fog, got confirmation about some things, especially beyond the involvement. So, Klein is being Detective Klein. And I like that. I'm wanting to be a detective with Klein, but I think the real detectiveness will start in season 2, where we have Sherlock Moriarty or whatever, right? His new name is. Also, we can still make theories about the Hornatis mountain range and stuff to us that haven't been revealed yet. I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, next chapter is actually The big 100! Ooh, the big 100! Let's go! Chapter 100. I have to move the thing. First time ever. Yeah, I didn't change it to 98, 99, man. I'm sad. Big 100. Rah! 100, rah! Let's freaking go. This is my 100th chapter. Yay! Let's celebrate. Now I realize that mullet. I have a mullet. I wanna grow my beard back, man. Look at all this like neck fat. I have to lose more weight until I can like shave my beard. I have to lose like 25 kilograms more. Let's go. Chapter 100. Interpreting symbols. Why the hard word interpreting? Wow, I lost so much aura right there. I have looked it up before. Interpreting symbols. The clues to clown potion. On the seat of honor at the ancient bronze table, Klein repeated the divination statement a few times before leaning back and entering a deep sleep. His surroundings quickly became peaceful and quiet. He saw a hazy view with countless distorted and blurry scenes flashing past just like drops of morning dew on tender flowers petals. Damn, I like that comparison. Gradually, Klein grasped in his spirituality and came to his senses. He saw a fireplace before him with a rocking chair in front of him. Sitting on it was an old woman dressed in black and white. Ooh. Although he could not see her face since she was hanging her head low, Klein's gut feeling told him that she was an old lady, and he was pretty certain about it. The old lady was facing the desk directly. There were newspapers and tin cans inlaid with silver on the desk. Klein found the scene before his eyes very familiar, and he quickly recognized what he saw. This was for Ray Bieber and his Mother's Day. This is Bieber's mom. This is where he saw a bloated cadaver for the first time. There are clues to point to the clown potion here. Just as Klein's thoughts flashed past, the scene around him transformed. Grayish white warehouse hidden among identical buildings. The White House was near the place he fought the clown. There were White House bones scattered all around, a few balls of flesh that looked like they had been squashed by a boulder. In the middle of the warehouse was a grayish white object that was the size of a fist. The surface was filled with stitches and it looked soft and ductile. It looked like a brain that had been extracted out of a living being. In the warehouse with Bieber, right? Just as Klein recognized the scene and recalled something, the scene before him distorted like a rippling water before transforming into another new blurry scene. A naked body was laid on a long table covered with white cloth. There were some bluish discolored patches on the corpse's skin. Klein suddenly knitted his eyebrows and muttered. It was the first images of Ray Bieber's hiding place and his remains, and now set to the brand of the suited clown's wrist. Just as he attempted to speculate what the scenes meant, the scene suddenly changed again. A marble coffee table, a set of two leather couches, and a chandelier that hung high on the ceiling. There were three people: Klein Moretti with black hair, brown eyes, colorly temperament, and a wealthy man with a chubby body and pale skin, with a beautiful young lady with fishnet gloves. His classmates that killed themselves. Knowing that it was another three people at an object: a middle-aged man in black robe who had thick spiky brown hair. Hanas, a filthy man with a chubby body and a pale skin. A half-century-old elder with a messy eyebrows, thin brown hair and grey bluish eyes, and black notebook on the round table. In between all of them, a notebook that exuded an ancient and distant air. So chubby body, that's serious, right? And the half-century-old elder is probably Mr. Said. Antikonus family notebook. Klein suddenly sat up straight and the dream vanished. looking outside the divine hall, where there was boundless grey fog and crimson stars, he thought in both shock and confusion. I was divining for clues to the clone potion. Why would the Anticonus family notebook show up? Ooh. Let me think. The chubby guy was Welsh. Yes, Welsh, an unfortunate fella. Oh, Welsh buying the book, maybe. Who bought the Antigonus family notebook and triggered a sequence of incidents. The beautiful young lady wearing Christian clothes was Naya, exactly. I remember the marble coffee table and leather couch combination in a handy hallmark of Felch's place. I saw spirit medium Dali there. Other words, what I saw was Welch's living room. It was seen where the original Klein and his two classmates were discussing a notebook. Klein calmed himself down and tapped on the edge of the long bronze table rhythmically. Then what does the last scene represent? The notebook appeared, Welch appeared. Could it be the scene where he bought the ancient item? There were two people. One of them looked very familiar. Hannes Vincent. I feel like I've seen the middle-aged man in the classic black robe somewhere before. That spiky brown hair, severe dark eye circle. Yes, I know. Who is he now? Hannes Vincent from the Nation Club. So Hannes Vincent who died peacefully after Klein captain snuck into his dream, having learned that Selena secretly obtained a secret incantation from him. No way! He was the one that sold the notebook to Welch. Ooh! Everything appears to be coming full circle. The world sure is small. No, Dingen is really small. On careful thought, it really is a possibility that Hannes Vincent wasn't an ordinary fortune teller. He was obviously deep into mysticism and obtained the attention of an ancient evil god. He had channeled ability and opportunity to acquire the notebook that was accidentally released by the secret order. Oof. It's no wonder Captain and company never figured out where Welch bought the notebook. Their investigative approach was entirely wrong. They had attempted to investigate via the antique market, but when the actual whereabouts of the notebook was found, they gave up on that lead. What a pity, Hannes Vincent just passed away not too long ago. Sarat killed him. Otherwise, we definitely could have found out something regarding the notebook. Since he was involved in mysticism, he should have researched the notebook. His death was way too coincidental. However, there was another person I'd seen, a man in his 50s. He might know quite a bit what happened. Klein stopped tapping his fingers on the edge of the table and looked through every scene of his dream divination again. Yeah, we are reading a cultivation novel right now. Ray Bieber's house, Ray Bieber's hideout spot, remains of Ray Bieber, the brand of the Sude Clown, Wrist, Welch's house, Welch Naya, original coin exchange, Welch Hannes Vincent and the Anticonus Summer notebook group photo. Hehe. Besides the brand on the Sude Clown, everything else is directly related to the Anticonus family's notebook. But I had divined for clues to the clown potion. This isn't specific, nor does it make mystical sense. After becoming a seer, Klein once started to divine where Welch had brought the Anticonus summer notebook, but they never considered using the unique qualities that the area of the grey fog possessed. As such, he had failed to receive any revelations, but now he had chanced upon the truth by divining something separate. After spending nearly 20 seconds to calm down, Klein summarized the context provided by Roselle's diary and attempted to interpret his dream divination. The first possibility, Saratur, or should I say the Secret Order, was searching and pursuing. Why did you change it, Klein? Say Saratul. I think Saratul is still alive. Was searching and pursuing the relics of Anticonus family, so the symbolic meaning of the dream is to use matters related to Anticonus family to lure the Secret Order into appearing, so as to obtain the clown potion formula. Second possibility, the clown potion formula is directly recorded in the Anticonus family's notebook. The fact that Saratul family is seeking the relics of the Anticonus family implies that they share the deep connections. They could have been allies or enemies, hence it seems very unnatural that the Anticonus family possessed part of their sequence. Maybe things could be obvious if they were allies, but enemies are ones who could know each other the best. But the second explanation won't be able to link it to the brand on the Sude Clown. Sigh, I do not wish the second explanation were true though. When the Holy Cathedral finds an expert to interpret the notebook, I will be able to obtain the clown potion without any risk. It seems that the first explanation is the most plausible. My gut feeling as a seer tells me about that there might be a deeper symbolic meaning. I think so too, because they also talked about in the diary, but there was more about a sealed artifact from the craftsmanship church. Maybe that artifact was also Anticonus. Having thought about this, Klein massaged his forehead and suddenly realized the imitations of a seer. Unless it was very simple and straightforward sign, a seer had to be extremely careful when making interpretations. It was just like walking on an edge of the abyss or walking on a thin layer of ice over lake surface. So the clown outcome was an actual and bloody example of a single mistake and fuck me, dude. Interpretation or failure.
Interpretation.
Interpretation. Guys, I'm sorry, man. Interpretation of or failure to grasp a key point could result in. In that instant, Klein had an illusion of himself mastering the true essence of a seer. He seemed to be just one step away from digesting the potion completely. Thank you for enlightening me with your life. Praise the lady, he muttered and drew a crimson moon before his chest. Then he divined whether Asik had good intentions or if he was an amazing beyonder. What about both? They can be both mutually exclusive, no? He received confirmations for both of them, yeah. So he is a beyonder plus he has good intentions. Eventually, the continuous divinations exhausted Klein. He had no choice but to stop churning through his thoughts and decide on the crucial matters that he needed to attend to. By the way, we did not see Klein's reaction to Asik being a beyonder. Like, he just brushed it off. I have to find the man that appeared in the same scene with Welsh, Hannes Vincent, and Dante Samurai notebook as soon as possible. Again, begin my search with the divination cloud. I can't just confront Mr. Asik. Yes, he might be a mid-sequence beyonder of the life school of thought, but there's a lack of information, making it impossible for me to divine. Phew, Glenado last breath and conjured the portrait of half-century-old elder with messy eyebrows, thin and brown hair, grey blue eyes, and coat skin that appeared before him. This was the third person present when the Antico Summer notebook was traded between Welsh and Hannes Vincent. Looking at the portrait, Klein suddenly fell into a dilemma. I can't draw. So, how does Soratur look like? Looking at the portrait, Klein suddenly fell into a dilemma. I can't draw. During art class in primary school, I was always the one receiving the greatest criticism from the teachers. Should I use the ritualistic magic like Ankh Neil? This was done by praying to the goddess. If I were to use the uniqueness of the area of the grey fog, I would be in trouble if the divinities would notice something amiss. Hold on a second, perhaps I can pray to myself. Jeez, Sigma. Transmitting images and transmitting voices are similar. Although I'm temporarily unable to access the mysterious power above the grey fog, accomplishing such a minor matter shouldn't be a problem. Having thought of this, Klein immediately eliminated his spirituality to envelop himself to simulate the feeling of falling. Back in his bedroom, he lit the gas lamp and prayed. The fool doesn't belong to this era. You're the mysterious ruler about the the grey fog. I said gay frog. I switched the R and put it in the fog and made it gay frog. Anyway, you're the king of yellow and black who feels good luck. I pray for your revelation and pray that you allow me to draw what I've seen. After reciting the incantation, Klein didn't splash essential oils or burn the herbs to gain help from their powers. It was just that informal when praying to oneself. There were suddenly murmurs in his ears as he saw 4 black dots that formed a square surfaced on the back of his hand. He walked 4-stepped counterclockwise and decided the incantation before penetrating the maniacal chaos to return to the area above the grey fog. This time he didn't use any of the crimson stars shrinking or expanding, but behind the seat of honor, the long bronze table, the strange symbol formed by a partial pupilless eye and a partial dotted line shimmering weakly as he produced illusory prayers. Same symbol, by the way. Klein held his ear to it and listened. After making sure there were no mistakes, he conjured the portrait of the third person and cast it towards the flowing light in accordance of the prayer's format. After everything was done, he immediately left the mysterious world above the grey fog and returned to his bedroom. Just as he found his footing, a portrait surfaced immediately in front of Klein's eyes. Furthermore, he sensed a weak and illusory power augmenting him. He picked up a fountain pen and found a piece of white paper and expressed his intent. Glenn was surprised to find his right hand moving uncontrollably as it quickly drew lines. Before long, he saw a lifelike portrait of the third person. After writing down the hair and eye colors as well as other unique characteristics, Glenn heaved a sigh of relief despite the spasms of his right hand. The illusion before his eyes rapidly dissipated. Damn. So here has a picture of, I'm guessing, Mr. Zed. Now, that was really cool, right? Chapter 101 is next. I just want to say, by the way, that he found out that Azik was a Beyonder and he was like, okay, cool. Does he have good intentions? Okay, cool. How do I approach him? He wasn't like surprised at all. I'm surprised about that. Anyway. He did his little divination thing above the grey fog. He saw Naya, Welch. He saw all of the things that led up to the Antigono's notebook being in Welch's hands, and he's trying to figure out, what to do with that information. Now, and maybe we're gonna get a deep description of Mr. Zed in the next chapter, in this one. He did say a little bit about his, face and hair and eyebrows, but nothing really like we know that he's in his mid-50s or something, like an old man. Anyway, I'm gonna end the stream here. We have been live for 3 hours and 20 minutes. A lot of yapping, a lot of reading, we did 12 chapters today, or 11 chapters today. We're coming back on Sunday to do at least like 11 to 15 more, which is Sundays in 2 days. And yeah, I'll see you then. Thank you for coming, guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate